ጤና ይስጥልን የተከበራችሁ አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን፣ ይህ አዲስ ቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት ነው።
My name is Karim Bardeesy and I'm running in this election because Doug Ford and his government let us down. And if they let us down once, they'll do it again. In fact, they're doing it right now. And we can't afford a government that's going to let us down because we've got some urgent challenges to address. Not just today, but tomorrow. We've got a housing market that's pricing our neighbors out of our community. We've got an economy that's only working for the well-connected or the already wealthy. We've got a warming climate that's causing despair and sickness. We've got demands for racial justice and reconciliation that we all need to hear. And we've got the prospect of a fourth wave and no plan to deal with it.
Hello and welcome to New Perspective አዲስቅኝት. Today we are featuring Karim Bardeesy. Karim Bardeesy is a father, husband, teacher, journalist and policy leader running as an experienced, effective progressive for Onterio Liberal nomination in Parkdale-High Park. Karim is a trusted voice on policy issues whose experience as policy director and deputy principal secretary in the Dalton, McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne governments will make him an effective member of provincial parliament. Karim runs the Ryerson Leadership Lab, a leadership development and policy institute at Ryerson University, where he has won 2 teaching awards and is also columnist for the Toronto Star. Very much, Karim Bardeesy. Welcome to New Perspective show. We are very happy to have you in our show. Congratulations on your nomination for Liberal candidacy for Parkdale-High Park riding.
Thank you very much. Candidate for the Ontario Liberal Party, and it's currently a Remembrance Day, November 11th, and we expect the nomination to be held possibly soon.
Okay, so today is a Remembrance Day, as you said. So, what's your reflection about this day, and what do you remember in particular?
I reflect on the tremendous sacrifices that Canadians of all stripes have made, including those who were not always honored with full citizenship for our country and more generally for freedom. I think a lot of people think of a Remembrance Day as a holiday that's about wars that are in our distant past, but Canadians have fought with valor or have died in the cause of peace all the way up to the present day. I'm also thinking of the people who have come to our country from other countries who have experienced war and displacement, and knowing that they came here for peace. They came here often for a better life, as my parents did, coming from Egypt, leaving a war in Egypt that Egypt was fighting with Israel in the early 1970s, and knowing that this country gave them a place to begin a life in peace. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
That's interesting. Talking about immigration and immigrant family, you are the son of immigrants. And yes. Recently, the Premier Doug Ford comment on immigration and immigrants, and so many people were offended. What's your reflection on that?
To me, it really reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of our province, of our country, and of the motivations for people who come to this country, and more generally, the people who you can't not work hard if you're especially if you're living in downtown Toronto or the west part of Toronto in Parkdale-High Park. This is a very welcoming community, very warm community. But the challenges that exist in our riding mean that people have to work hard, and to assert that some people are not worthy of full recognition because of some view that they're not ready to do the work just does not correspond with anything I've seen in terms of the actual experience of people in this community, whether they're immigrants or not.
Karim, you are a teacher, you are a journalist, and you are a policy advisor for so many MPs in this province, including the previous Premier, Kathleen Wynne, And I hope this is a very important turning point in your life. So what's your priorities for Parkdale-High Park riding and the province in general?
My priorities, my inspiration for running was seeing the experience of the pandemic through the eyes of the young people I teach and the young people who are in our community. Our kids go to TDSB schools nearby, and seeing how provincial decisions really damaged them. Provincial decisions meant that my students did not have paid sick leave when they needed it, even though their jobs were getting more dangerous if they kept their jobs. Provincial decisions meant that kids were stuck at home too long doing remote schooling that is going to have some damaging long-term effects on them, and further distracting and trying to and stressing out their parents and older siblings who were trying to take care of them while doing their own work. Provincial decisions meant that transportation options were not there, that our schools and workplaces and long-term care facilities were not safe enough. And that's not something I could abide as someone who had the experience in government. As you referred to, I was the director of policy to Kathleen Wynne. I'm also a former journalist, so I know a bit about how to hold power to account, and that the powers that be in government were allowing these things to happen when we knew better decisions were available. We knew we could have brought in paid sick leave. We knew we could have brought in rapid testing in schools. We knew we could have protected long-term care. Within a few months of the pandemic, we knew what the solutions were to a number of the challenges, and yet we still didn't act in time. So there was a demonstration of weakness and weak leadership on behalf of the government, I believe. And that's what motivated me to run. As I've been meeting people around the riding and meeting people who are interested in supporting Liberals in this riding, and there are a number of them, I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing that there's a deep interest in climate action, which is the more fundamental motivation for me running for office. If I wasn't going to run this time, I was going to run soon enough, because Ontario Liberals need to be the most climate forward party. Across generations, we know that we have only a limited number of years to get to stop emitting carbon into the atmosphere and to be creating carbon sinks that are going to be making sure that our planet, that our community is safe and livable. We're so lucky in this community to have Great Lakes in our riding, to have High Park, a real gem in this riding. But these things need to be protected, and we don't want young people growing up with the concern that they're facing an uncertain future because the very planet that they live in is at risk. So that's an underlying motivation to a lot of people when you start to talk to them. The other big thing that I'm experiencing, and I believe passionately we need to do a lot more to address, which again, I have some experience on this in government and at our think tank, is around economic inclusion. If our community only makes space for the people who are already connected, who already have wealth, that will be to the long-term damage of all of us. Most people who come to this community don't bring that to the community. They don't already bring a lot of wealth. They don't necessarily bring a lot of connections, but they're hungry. They want to do better. They're coming with incredible talent and skills and education, and they just need the opportunity to do the work at a fair wage with workplace protections, but to invest in the community and build the economy for the community. And if this community prices out everyone except the already wealthy or the already connected, that means that we're going to face deeper and bigger problems. I sat in on a Tribunals Ontario hearing, landlord and tenant board set of hearings related to the West Lodge buildings yesterday as an observer, and heard the really difficult situations a lot of people are in terms of needing representation to have the right to stay in their house, in their apartment. And in this riding, there aren't many places to live that are affordable for people, and that's a real thing we really need to tackle.
And where is the province at, when it comes to climate challenge and climate issues? What are the situation we are in now, and what are your proposals to
So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that the party will come out with a very imaginative. The Ontario Liberal Party will come out with a very imaginative climate action plan. Just yesterday, I received an endorsement from Catherine McKenna, the former federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change, because she sees me as a climate champion, someone who's a passionate advocate. When I was in government, we worked on carbon pricing to make sure that emitters paid their fair share, and that we all had a role to play in helping reduce carbon emissions. The province got rid of that, but luckily the federal government brought in a carbon price that's now been defended successfully in court. So we need to keep that carbon price. We need to increase the ambition to have more electrify our electricity grid. There's a lot of people in this riding who would like to make their first vehicle purchase an electric vehicle purchase. So we need to make that more affordable with support programs. We need to help people who want to make their homes more energy efficient, give them the tools to do that. But we also have to make the polluters pay for the carbon emissions that are going out there. I also have hope that in our riding, we can see efforts to bring young people into the conversation around climate action and show them that there are jobs available in climate action and that there's local activation that they can do. And one of the great things about this riding is how much energy and how much interest there is in those issues. And I hope to be able to be championing that, giving young people opportunities to connect to climate action. In my work at Ryerson University, we've actually just started a national climate youth leadership training project, which I'm very excited about. And I hope to bring some of those learnings potentially to my run for office.
እየተከታተላችሁ ያላችሁት የአዲስ ቅኝትን የሚዲያ አገልግሎት ነው። እኛ ነፃ የሐሳብ ልውውጥ እንዲኖር ከመገፋፋት መሳሳብ ከመራራቅ መቀራረብ እንዲፈጠር ጠንክረን እንሰራለን። እናንተ ላይክ፣ ሼር እና ሰብስክራይብ በማድረግ የማህበረሰብ ሚዲያ አጋርነታችሁን አረጋግጡ። አዲስ ቅኝት የሚዲያ አገልግሎት።
When it comes to affordability, what's your plan for affordable housing in the province and in the riding? I think that it's one of the great problems that we have in the province, in this city especially. So do you think you have a feasible proposal for this?
Yeah. So affordability is a very complex issue, and I don't want to pretend to have all the solutions to the affordability crisis. But I'll say a few things. We need to build more housing. I mean, to be working with communities across different parts of the riding to make sure that there is an acceptance of more and new housing, to have that intensification so that where it makes sense, we can build higher. We can have more multi-person units, so we're not just building one-bedroom condos. That involves municipal zoning policy, but it also involves provincial policy planning. We need to be, one of the things I will give the provincial government some credit for is they've made a priority of building housing and intensification around transit. So where we have transit, we should be building more housing. We just have to do it in a way that makes sense, so that we're not building a 50-story tower of only one-bedroom condos. That doesn't make any sense. That's not what our community needs. But we need more regular housing, a variety of types. We need a government that works well with the federal government, works well with the new housing minister, Ahmed Hussein, to be getting the best deal possible for Ontario and for our community to get housing funds in this community. And we also need things like we need to help retilt the balance so that tenants are not subject to rent evictions by landlords who look to jack up the rent and change who's living there. By having some renovation plan that may or may not make sense. We need affordable housing in this community, and we need even the private landlords have a responsibility, I believe, to their existing tenants to help ensure that they have safe and affordable housing. And what I've learned in this riding is that that's not always the case.
Yeah, we are almost in the post-pandemic situation now. And there are so many problems, social problems and economic problems are coming up, and the mental health and racism and the gun violence is, the challenge that we are facing in this city and this province. So how do you address these issues, and what are your policy options for these ones?
We need to understand the effects of what's happened. I just had in my day job, I teach at Ryerson University, a class on the pandemic and the policy responses to it. We had as a guest speaker last week, Caroline Alfonso, the Globe and Mail's education reporter. And she stressed, and my students really took away from that in the education system, we don't know what the effects are. We have a sense, we hear the stories of the long-term effects of being out of school, long-term effects of the mental health impacts that might exist. But we really need to really take a serious look at that. We can't pretend that it didn't happen. We need the chance to grieve and mark the people we've lost. We need a chance to collectively grieve the mental health impacts that have been had on us. We need to say that it's okay that we have mental health impacts, that we're not all going to bounce back the way that people want us to, that our teachers, that our employers want us to. And provincial policy has a role in supporting that, in making allowance for people. And yes, providing mental health supports, but also building the kind of economy, building the kind of fair relationship that people have with their school systems or their employers, so that people can have the chance to recover from the pandemic, especially the mental health impacts. I saw it so acutely with my students last year. They seem a bit better this year, but what are the long-term impacts? We see it. The parents who, my fellow parents who have kids in school, the kids seem better, but what are the long-term impacts? So we need to really have a sense of that. You mentioned a number of issues, and I'm so pleased that one of the unfortunate facts of the pandemic is that what truths that a lot of people didn't realize, they're now starting to see. Now starting to see. They're now starting to see, because it's been put in their face by a number of activist communities and a number of people who did very brave work during the pandemic to show that we have systemic racism in Canada and in our community, that we have to act to fight it. And so I believe there's a growing awareness of that. The comments that Premier Ford made, that you referred to at the beginning of our conversation, do not help with that. We need to acknowledge those things and create space for people and for policy to respond.
Interesting. As a journalist, I hope you understand the landscape of journalism for local communities and community medias and local medias, and for marginalized communities, have
Yes.
no outlets. For instance, the community I'm working for is Ethiopian and Eritrean community. They're mostly living in the eastern part of the city, and there is no media outlet. So what are your policy options for grassroots medias and community medias?
I worked a bit on this in the government with Kathleen, when this is so important for a healthy democracy. This is so important for a community to feel served by good information. New Perspectives obviously has a listenership and an audience that reaches a wide variety of communities, as you referred to. The other thing I'll just say incidentally is that Canada has been home to some very heroic and brave Ethiopian and Eritrean journalists who have come here, given some of the freedom of speech constraints in Ethiopia and Eritrea, and have practiced very bravely their journalism in Canada. And we need space for that. The mainstream media outlets I worked at were not always as receptive to community-driven voices and community journalists or experienced journalists who had worked elsewhere. So we need policy supports. I think it's very important that local advertising, that local institutions invest their advertising dollars locally. So they're not just advertising on Facebook and Google, but they're advertising in those community outlets. And that we should look at public subsidy programs. Some of the larger companies have done very well with public subsidy programs, or are doing very well with programs with Google and Facebook. It's time to look at how smaller outlets, more community-driven outlets, can benefit from some of those same policy tools. Yeah, the pandemic taught us a lot about who's in power matters and how power is used matters. Doug Ford used his power badly. He's a weak leader, but we can do better.
That's interesting. And where do you want to see yourself after the June election? And let's see about your future and your...
Well, I hope that the members of the party, or the people who sign up to vote in the nomination in Parkdale-High Park, decide to put their faith in me collectively. And so I hope to be their candidate whenever that decision is made. And then
for between then and the election. The election is in less than 7 months. So I hope to be out there busy on the streets with my team and with a party that's offering a very progressive, forward-looking vision for the province that's practical, but that's really ambitious on behalf of the province. I hope to be part of that team and hope to have the honor of being elected by the voters of Parkdale-High Park in June 2022. That's my ambition at the moment, and within that, I have all the ambitions that I mentioned earlier around climate action, around economic inclusion, and in response to some of your questions, taking on some of those issues that you asked me about.
Thank you very much, Karim. I'm really appreciating your time, and I wish you a happy Remembrance Day and best of luck in your competition. So hopefully we will talk about next time with another edition and with another issue.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gazagan. And I just note that if people are interested, they can check out our website, www.votekarim.ca, and we expect the nomination will be held soon.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
እስካሁን ድረስ ከኛ ጋራ አስተያየት እየሰጣችሁ ኮሜንት እያደረጋችሁ ላይክ እያደረጋችሁ አብራችሁን ስለነበራችሁ ከልብ እናመሰግናለን። የዛሬውን አጠናቀናል። ሰላም ሁኑ።